Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. David Smith joining us here today. He's a therapist and owner of Thriving Family Therapy. Excited to talk to him more about his therapy practice and how he's licensed across 5 different states. So he's really here helping so many, let alone neurodiversity affirming coaching and training. Business is nationwide. So we're excited he's here joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jill?
Fantastic. Thanks so much. So first and foremost, I know we got a lot to get to because I want to get to know a little bit of your background and, of course, the work you do. So first and foremost, tell us a little bit about what Thriving Family Therapy has to offer.
Family Therapy is a practice that I started about 2 years ago when I went into private practice. And I specialize in working with neurodivergent people, people with complex trauma, healthcare workers and caregivers, parents, teachers who are experiencing burnout, which is pretty epidemic these days, and just really complicated families with difficult situations. More and more, since I launched the practice and checked off the box on Psychology Today saying I work with autism, my
Hmm.
practice has become very heavily focused on supporting autistic people and their loved ones. I had no idea when I went into practice and emphasized that as an area of specialization that there was such unmet demand. So that's become about 60 or 70% of my practice these days.
Wow. And where are you currently based out of?
I'm based at Grants Pass, Oregon, which is down in the southwest corner. So,
Perfect. But you mentioned you're licensed in 5 states. Would you mind sharing
yeah.
what states in particular?
Yeah, so my primary license is in Oregon. That's where I got licensed first. I'm also licensed in California and Idaho, and then I have telehealth registrations in Florida and Vermont. So that's for my therapy work. More recently, I've launched a new area of focus, which is helping therapists and healthcare professionals and employers and other people learn how to implement more neurodiversity affirming care and support neurodivergent people in their workplaces and their practices. This is just such a dearth of knowledge. So many studies have shown that even therapists who specialize in mental health may be willing to work with autistic people, but they may or may not have any training or knowledge about exactly how to help. And many of the standard practices don't land well, and forming therapeutic rapport is complicated. Doctors and other medical professionals have even harder problems. So there's a huge gap in neurodiversity affirming care for this population. So I'm offering
Beautiful.
consultation and training and however else I can help to people who are just trying to be more supportive to their neurodivergent people.
Perfect. Well, back up a little. I know you
Mhm.
had no intention of becoming a career professional in a sense as a child. I want to get to your background. You wanted to be a writer, and I
Mhm.
know you're still working on
Yep.
writing as well. So let's find out more about you. I want to find out about your childhood, what brought you into this career path, and then we'll talk a little later about, the work that you're doing and the type of people you're able to help. Thank you.
Yep. I appreciate that. So I had I guess I would say a pretty happy childhood for the most part. My parents have been together for, geez, it's 40, no, 60 years this year, actually, coming up in
Wow.
September. And we moved around a lot. So many times that I've been asked that whether or not I come from a military family. We don't. My dad was just restless and chased
Mm-hmm.
opportunities in different places. Um, Overall, it was a fairly normal childhood. In retrospect, there was a lot of difficulty for me, just being someone who didn't fit well in the world. I did not know at the time and did not know until actually a year ago that I was autistic. I was only diagnosed last July. It's been almost a year. Um, and I'd been working with autistic people for about 8 years at that point before I ever really took seriously the idea that I might be autistic myself. So, in retrospect, a lot of the challenges that I had in childhood can be kind of tied to that, just being a misfit, someone who never quite belonged. I did super well in school, graduated near the top of my class, got my undergrad at Harvard, went on to get 2 master's degrees. Um, but I went through many episodes of burnout and depression and anxiety and lots of things that I could just describe as complex trauma, although I've never been able to point to what exactly the really horrible things were. So it's been kind of a quest to understand that
Wow.
over the years.
Wow. So
So,
now this is fascinating to hear because people are diagnosed at different ages. And,
mhm,
especially, when I was growing up, I don't know your age, I'm 47,
yeah,
but we didn't really have those type of diagnoses
nope,
in school, right? And it wasn't
yep,
until how many years ago did this become apparent that it's a diagnosis. And there's so many people who have been, neurodivergent in a sense, but we never had an answer for it, explanation.
yeah,
And I just love hearing that, later in life you were diagnosed, like this happens now. And
yeah.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's amazing. For those that don't know, could you tell us a little bit about what neurodivergent means and what's going on in, the minds and bodies of some people with, these types of neurodivergent Cs, if that's even a
Yeah,
word.
that's a
Thank
really
you.
good topic. Thanks for asking that. Um, so more and more, the traditional view of diagnoses like autism and ADHD is that they're disorders. They're developmental
Yeah.
disorders or mental health disorders. I don't like that language, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe that's necessarily true. It can be true. I think of autism and ADHD as sort of like a spice mix, like garam masala. Common ingredients, but every household in India has their own specific recipe for garam masala. Autism and ADHD are kind of similar. There are certain common components that are part of the
Mm-hmm.
mix, but everybody has their own particular flavor, and they may have a light sprinkling or a really heavy dose, depending on the recipe. That's kind of how I think about it. The concept of neurodiversity is that there isn't just one type of human as a model, and then everybody who doesn't fit that mold is flawed or broken or somehow has a disorder. We as humans have a very diverse array of neurotypes. Neurotypical people, so what we kind of call those who don't fall into these other areas of the spectrum, they function pretty normally in society, are kind of the majority. But I think the current estimates are that about one in every 35 children, and thus, if you think about it logically, about one in
Mm-hmm.
35 adults, because they do grow up, um, is classified as diagnosably autistic. The numbers are probably a
Okay.
little higher for ADHD. And there are other forms of neurodivergence. So, Tourette disorder, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, um, many areas in which the nervous system is just different from the way that the standard blueprint. Another analogy is that I like to think of it like you have your standard car, comes out of the factory, you drive it according to the manual. Some of us have cars that are, kind of custom designed by a mad mechanic who left no
Mm-hmm.
blueprint and no user's manual, and things just don't work the way that we're told they're supposed to work. And it's easy to go through life not really understanding why.
Yeah.
The classic autism diagnosis, as it's shown in the DSM-5, has a specific set of criteria, which are organized toward the classic people that were studied, which were young white boys from middle and upper class families who were severely impaired in speech and behavior. And that's still what most people think of when they think of autism. We have a stereotype.
Yeah.
These days, it's getting updated to include people like, well, there's so many portrayals on TV these days, but it's still
Yeah.
that classic socially awkward, kind
Yeah.
of brilliant, but weird, usually male, annoying, but otherwise smart person. It's a stereotype,
Yeah.
but it's a huge, diverse world.
Sure
And
is.
so neurodivergence is the idea that there are people who just differ from the
Yep.
stereotype.
Well, I have a niece and a nephew who are neurodivergent and diagnosed with
Awesome.
autism, so I'm in the loop completely.
Hmm.
And and it's so funny because I don't like when people use the word disability, like you mentioned, in
Hmm.
a sense, or diagnose. It's to me, it's an ability, and
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's someone who's different, and that's their
Yeah.
ability to be different. So thank you for clarifying that, and I'm excited that you're here to talk to us and to talk about the work you're doing and
Hmm.
how challenging is it being that you are neurodivergent as well? Could you
Hmm.
share? Because there's not that much information out there. They're not getting the care
Yeah.
that they need, the proper health care in a sense. Did you want to share a little bit about
Uh,
that?
it is really hard for people who are neurodivergent to get decent care in any setting, not just therapy, but in any healthcare setting. People who are neurodivergent tend to have a lot of sensory sensitivities, some social challenges, don't necessarily react well to a typical setting. So, and many therapists and many other healthcare professionals are not familiar enough with neurodiverse people to know exactly how to support them. So often people will go into healthcare settings seeking help for complicated medical conditions because neurodivergent people have typically some very complicated and weird healthcare conditions. And they go into a setting that is overstimulating on a sensory level, socially challenging. Uh, they don't necessarily know how to explain their situation and who they are and what's going on with them in the typical 8 to 15 minute window that they're given.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't get adequate care. The system doesn't know what to do with them. Even your typical therapist, the average master's program to prepare someone to become a therapist includes, maybe one session in your 2 to 3 years of training on developmental disorders, as they're
Yep.
called. And it doesn't give you anything, usually, that will tell you how to work with these people. So many therapists, when assigned an autistic client or when someone asks for help, are willing, but they don't necessarily know what to do. And for autistic people, traditional methods like psychoanalysis, psychodynamics, CBT, behavioral therapies, things like that, give good understanding about what's going on, maybe insight. But what's happening is not at the cognitive level. It's at the sensory level. It's at the whole
Yeah.
being level. It's a whole body experience. And understanding why this is happening does not change what's happening. So the work that I do often is helping people with these complex custom
Mm-hmm.
vehicles with no user manual learn how to develop an operating manual for their nervous system and their body and their mind and their thoughts and their behaviors and their self-care habits. So we work with things like stress management because that's crucial. We work with self-compassion, which is also crucial because we get the message all through our lives that we are flawed, broken humans,
Mm-hmm.
not that we were different and need
Yeah.
different forms of support. And the world is a harsh place. So we work
Yeah.
on modifying their environment and the way they deal with their environment to make it more supportive, more nurturing, more controllable. That's kind of the gist of what I do. There's a
Ah,
lot more to it, but and a lot of techniques, but I don't need to get too technical. It's
got it.
basically to help them survive the world in a more nurturing way so they go from surviving to thriving. Thus the name of the practice.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, beautiful. And thank you for joining us and for being here and talking about this and helping
Mhm.
so many. And let me ask now, I know you mentioned the path to becoming a licensed, as a therapist in the US. You said it
Mhm.
wasn't easy, right? Now that was an
Yeah,
obstacle you had to overcome as well,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah,
and how did you manage that? Because at the time you said you didn't understand what was going on inside of yourself because you never had a
right,
diagnosis, right? But
right,
I just love hearing that anything is possible. Could you share a little bit of that
yeah.
journey?
Well, I had lots of diagnoses, just not the right ones.
Mm-hmm.
People like me tend to collect a lot of diagnoses over the course of our life because, things happen and we don't really know what's going on. So depression, anxiety, trauma, you name it. I came to therapy late in life. I was a management consultant for major multinational corporations for a while. I was a stay-at-home dad for about 10 years. And in my mid 40s, I guess it was actually late 40s, I decided that I needed to get more active. There was a major tragedy in my family. A cousin committed suicide
Ah,
and tragically killed his son as he went out of this world. And he'd been like a brother in many ways growing up. And that was kind of a spur to action. And I decided that I needed to get more involved in actually helping people. I loved raising my kids. Being a stay-at-home dad was one of the most precious things in my experience. I have 3 boys who are just awesome. But I wanted to do more than simply live through my kids.
ah,
So in 2015, I had already gotten a master's in fine arts and writing,
wow.
pursue dream number one.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't enough. So I went back to school online to get a master's in social work from Simmons University and specializing in complex childhood trauma, which was my passion at the time. And then it was a long, slow path. I did have kids still at home.
Mm-hmm.
I live in a fairly remote, small town without very many services, including places to do my internships. And COVID kind of interrupted the
Right?
process.
Oh gosh.
Uh,
Yep.
At one time, I was one of a handful of therapists assigned to elementary schools, working in the schools. working with children and families who was still willing to see people in person. And that was hard.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to get my license. And I went through a lot of stress and several episodes of burnout, where I just went through complete systems collapse and had to take some time off to recover. And then, as the world went back to normal and they started requiring us to go back into the office and, sit at our desk 8 to 5, I just found that too hard. So I went into private practice. I loved being a school-based child and family therapist and just adored those kids and teachers and families. But being in that environment, especially during the cafeteria time when the fifth graders and kindergartners were on the other side of my wall,
Yeah.
was just too hard. So
Ah.
private practice, working online across 5 states and
Mhm.
providing support nationwide, is a much better fit for my particular nervous system. I love the work. I just adore the work. It's a
Yeah.
lot sometimes, but I do adore it.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much. And I want to hear more, obviously, about the people you're helping. So I know you really, you focus in so many different areas, from those who are neurodivergent, those who are struggling with depression, anxiety, as we
Hmm.
mentioned,
Hmm. Yeah.
divorce, grief, parenting issues. Do you want to discuss some of that? And I would love to hear, some examples, obviously, of the people you're helping, and some, without using
Hmm.
their names, of course,
Of
but of
course.
some of the things you've helped people overcome their challenges.
You know, I started out thinking that I was going to focus on complex trauma, and I still do. I mean, there's massive overlap between not just the people, because neurodivergent people tend to experience a lot of trauma over the course of their lifetime and experience things as traumatic that someone else might not. But the symptoms and the issues overlap a lot. So a lot of the technologies, techniques, methods that I use for dealing with families and people who have experienced trauma apply pretty well to people who are autistic or have ADHD. There needs to be some modification, and everybody's unique. But so often there's several different profiles of the kind of people who come to me.
Okay.
So the autistic people are often people who have been seeing many therapists over the course of their lifetime. And age range has been anywhere from 12 to 78, I think has been my oldest.
Okay.
Someone in their 70s first confronting the idea that they might be autistic is interesting. They're often people who didn't get adequate help. They've tried everything. Some things helped, but not enough. And they finally decided to reach out to someone who specializes in autism. Now, I'm not going to paint myself as God's gift to autistic people. I'm not an expert. I'm a fellow traveler. I happen to be someone who has some training and a lot of life experience, which I didn't know at the time was autistic. But a
Yeah.
lot of the things that I do come from lived experience and intuition that could not come from any other place. It doesn't come from training. So there are people who believe they're autistic or were diagnosed at some point in their life, but never got effective help. And now they're
Yeah.
trying to find somebody who really understands it. And so we walk together as fellow travelers, trying to figure out how to manage this and explore what it means to be a neurodivergent person in a neurotypical world, which is
Yeah.
confusing and contradictory and all too often harsh and just really challenging. So that's one. I do have a lot of people who have ADHD with or without autism who are
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how to manage life. I've heard it said that, for the ADHD brain, it's like being at Grand Central Station at rush hour,
Yeah.
and you simply can't tune down all the input and focus on one thing at a time. It's not an attention deficit. It's a
Okay.
difficulty in focusing and sustaining attention. And life can be really chaotic for people like that. So we work on skills to manage their attention, stress management, which is crucial for both autistic and ADHD people, as well as those with trauma. We work on a lot of skills and a lot of self-compassion and modifying the way that they deal with their life so it's not so overstimulating and unmanageable. And then I work with a lot of really complicated families. And this is where the social work aspect comes in, because in a lot of cases, it's a matter of trying to find resources that can help support these parents dealing with kids who are autistic or have a lot of trauma or just have a massive number of behavioral or academic challenges. How do you keep those kids on some sort of a trajectory towards success, whether they're 8 or 28? Um, those family systems get really complicated and are under a lot of stress. And so I help the parents or caregivers navigate a system and a network that is not well designed for them. How do you get IEPs or 504 plans in the schools? How do you get the school to support your child and understand them better? Where do you find case management? Because they
Yeah.
spend so much time on the phone just managing appointments. It's insane. How do you deal with the stress of being a parent or a caregiver in that kind of situation? How do you develop the self-care that you need to keep going? The oxygen mask rule, put your own oxygen mask on first. And how do you
We always
accept that
put
this is
last. And as
life?
a parent, I know we always try that.
Yep,
That's you have to take care of
yep,
yourself first.
yep. It's hard to do. So I work with a lot of medical professionals who happen to be neurodivergent or dealing with burnout. I work with a lot of teachers at times who have had a terrible time over the past, and it wasn't even just COVID, it was hard before COVID, but since then it's gotten a lot harder. And and more, I'm providing consultation to people who just say, I don't know how to handle this situation. What can I do? And I also just got my supervisor's license in Oregon to help train therapists who are seeking licensure or still in grad school. That's exciting. I
Congratulations.
love mentoring, and it's really a passion to try to help other therapists learn how to work with this population in a much more affirming and positive and supportive way.
Beautiful. Thank
So,
you so much. We still have a few minutes left. What else did you want to make sure we cover and share with everyone for today?
I think a lot of the work that I do, and this is more broadly, deals with managing stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this applies to pretty much every human being these
Okay.
days. The world is just a very stressful place.
Mm-hmm.
Gabor Mate wrote a book recently. He's someone I just think is absolutely brilliant. I wrote a book called The Myth of Normal, which
Okay.
is a huge tome. It's a doorstop of a book.
Okay.
But his premise is that we're seeing a huge uptick in the number of people dealing with trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be easy to point to their experiences as the source of that trauma. But his premise, as I understand it, in short, is that it's not the people that are uh, the problem. It's the nature of our world, which is inherently traumatogenic. It causes trauma. Our modern life is not designed for humans. Neurodivergent people tend to be sort of the canaries in the coal mine. They're the ones who will experience and express this first because
Yeah.
we're very sensitive people. Cannot shield ourselves from the energy around us very easily. We
Mm-hmm.
feel everything. I mean, I don't know about everyone, but I and many autistic people I know, and those with ADHD, sometimes can walk into a room full of 1,000 people and immediately read the atmosphere of that room. And, either get settled down by it or really triggered by it. We cannot
Yeah.
tune it out. So a lot of the work that I do is helping people just navigate this world. How do you create a safe place for yourself?
Yeah.
How do you uh, tune down the volume and stay within your window of tolerance for stress? Because we all have one. If we exceed it, it's like an electrical circuit that has too much current going through it. One of two things is
Yeah.
going to happen. You're going to have a fire or the breaker's going to trip, meltdown or shutdown. So how do you manage your stress to stay within your window of tolerance so your nervous system doesn't burn out? That applies to pretty much everybody,
Yeah.
but it especially applies to certain categories of people, um, people with autism, ADHD, trauma, and caregivers, and whether that's professionally or personally,
Yeah.
deal with this every single day. And I know so many parents and grandparents when they're dealing with raising grandchildren
Oh
and
gosh. Yeah.
teachers and healthcare workers and other therapists who are just barely holding it together. So I encourage people to practice a lot of self-compassion and deal with reality as it is, not as you wish it was. Do what you need to do to find a way to nurture yourself and those you care about, regardless of what's happening in the world.
All
It's
right.
all we
Well,
can really do.
it's so true. Thank you. And how did you kind of want to leave off today for your audience, for your listeners as well?
You know, I would love to say that I can take on more clients. The fact is that I, like most people who specialize in neurodivergence, I am full with a massive wait list, which is one reason why I'm starting this new line of work to
Oh,
offer consultation and training to other therapists, healthcare professionals,
okay.
employers, in how to be more neurodiversity affirming, how to work with neurodiverse clients so that you don't, the natural reaction when you have an autistic client and you don't know what to do is to refer them to someone like me, to an autism specialist. There aren't enough of us, and we're all full
Mm-hmm.
forever. It's very difficult for neurodivergent people to get care. And I want to change that. I want to help therapists not have to refer out someone that they may have spent a year or 2 years or 3 years building a relationship with because they don't know what to do next once they get the autism diagnosis or that becomes the primary thing. How can I help you retain your client and just provide more neurodiversity affirming, more effective care? So, a quick consultation can often really help shift the direction. That applies whether you're a doctor, a therapist, anyone really. I'm willing
Beautiful.
to help, and that's something that I can do pretty much nationwide, even internationally. That doesn't require my therapy license. That's consultation and coaching. So that's
Beautiful.
something that I'm really excited about, and I hope over time will increase the capacity of people who are able to meet neurodivergent people in the place where they are and create a safe container for them to get the help and care that they need and deserve.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you here, getting to know you, and thank you for sharing your own incredible journey and story with us and letting people out there know that they are not alone and there is guidance, there is help out there. And really, you yourself have come from, merely surviving, as you say, right, to thriving.
Yep,
And that's what you're doing to so many and for so many, I should say. So thank
yep.
you again for being here. And David, how do we contact you?
My website is thrivingfamilytherapy.com. That contains a lot of the information that I presented today. My email address is probably the best way to contact me. That's David
Okay.
at thrivingfamilytherapy.com. I do have a Facebook page. You can find it the same way. There's an Instagram account, although frankly, it's rarely used. I'm hoping to change that as I get a little time on my
Got
hands.
it. Aw,
But that's the best way.
thank you again. Pleasure having you here. Looking forward to the next time we get to connect. I appreciate it and enjoy the extra extended holiday weekend.
Great. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you,
Take care.
David. Bye bye. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.